We would go to meetings with Bob Jones, right? And he's passed away now, and he would say some like outlandish things.
Right.
But some of the stuff that he said was like...
It was
legitimate.
Bob Jones told Mike that he could do anything he wanted with a woman except intercourse and keep his mantle.
Wow.
But some of the stuff that he said was like...
It was
legitimate. Mike Bickle, some of the greatest encounters he's ever had. The foundation of IHOP was off words of Bob Jones. I don't want our spirit-filled movement to get too safe.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want our spirit-filled movement to get too safe.
I don't want our spirit-filled movement to get too safe.
Yeah.
Right?
Mike Bickle, the manipulative predator, is a product of this very environment. He's a product of this philosophy. All of these men who are basically idolatrous of Bob Jones would say, yeah, he's pretty weird. He was kind of crazy. He did some things he probably shouldn't have, but boy, was he used by God. He had a special gifting from God, so you really shouldn't speak against him. I want to play you a little bit more of that roundtable discussion from April of a couple of years ago with Sam Storms and Justin Peters interacting, and then you'll see my interaction with that video.
Now, Bob Jones was a very unusual individual, quirky beyond words.
Immoral, sexually immoral. Immoral, sexually immoral.
Now, let's be clear about that.
Okay.
See, that's really slanderous.
Okay.
See, that's really slanderous. There was one incident in which Bob Jones manipulated two ladies.
It's not slanderous to say that somebody is sexually immoral when they tell women to strip naked in their office so that God can give them a specific prophetic word. Now, he didn't have sex with them, if that's what you mean. So does that make it not quite as bad? Is it sort of okay-ish? Seems like he's implying that. I know he isn't, but the language here is, well, it's the language that allows people like Mike Bickle to continually have a platform for decades. That's what it is.
On the basis of what he contended was a prophetic revelation, he never had sexual relations with them.
So he admits that Bob Jones told these women because he believed God was telling him, ladies, take off your clothes. This is the man who also said a bunch of other things that started an entire movement. If we love the people in our churches, we should be protecting them from people like Bob Jones. We shouldn't be protecting Bob Jones from the discernment ministers.
Especially in this age of these so-called discernment bloggers. I mean, if you part your hair on the wrong side, they're going to tell you you're going to hell. I mean, it's almost that bad.
That's really slanderous.
I have a wife. I have daughters. If they were told to strip naked in front of a man in his office, I wouldn't be saying nice things about him ever again. And I certainly wouldn't be referring to him as somebody that God used as a mighty tool to start a movement.
So Mike was very clear about his stance with regard to that, at the same time recognizing that Bob had a remarkable gift.
So Bob had a remarkable gift. This is the Todd Bentley excuse-making program. Yeah, Todd Bentley was sleeping with the intern. He was showing up drunk. He left his wife and children, but boy, he sure had a gift. I think this is the number one reason why trying to get new prophetic utterances from people who sort of maybe are prophets is inherently dangerous. It's inherently dangerous. There's no way to know for sure that something terrible won't happen. The way you do know for sure that something terrible won't happen is to not consider anybody a current modern-day prophet.
I mean, the Corinthians were as goofy and carnal as they can be, and yet they came behind no one in spiritual gifts.
I just got to say, this is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. The reason we have so much information or so much correction from the Apostle Paul to the Corinthians is because of how flawed they were and how immoral they were. They were actually guilty of misusing their spiritual gifts. That's why we have all of the information about the proper usage of the spiritual gifts. I've got a couple of quotes here from Mike Bickle's book, Growing in the Prophetic, where he teaches the same thing, that spiritual gifts are given as a free gift, just like salvation is a free gift to people who don't deserve it. So spiritual gifts are given to people who don't deserve it. The problem for us is that it is very hard to know what is really in someone's heart or how God perceives them. We need to be careful about judging spiritual gifts as invalid because of people's weakness and immaturity. God may be more concerned about what he has set out to accomplish in the life of the prophetic vessel than about passing full judgment on that person. Here's another quote from the next page. The fact that power and revelation flow through prophetic ministers is not necessarily a sign that God is pleased with the other areas of their lives. Sometimes the prophetic gifts will continue to operate even when there is an inner crumbling taking place in their private lives. This terrible idea is not found in the Bible, certainly not in the teachings of Jesus or any of the apostles. It's not a teaching of the Christian church, yet it was being taught and followed for decades. Now here's a related false teaching from the terrible false teacher Bill Johnson, and you'll notice that you combine these two ideas together and you've got a train wreck.
This may sound strange to you, but in our school of ministry, our students are actually required to get it wrong. If they don't fail at least 3 times in the first year, we won't let them in the second year. Why? If you're not willing to take risk to the point where you get it wrong, you probably won't get it right in the way you need to. But secondly, we want you to get it wrong in a loving environment so you know how to clean up your mess.
If you simply take Bill Johnson's teaching here, it makes sense that Bob Jones doing what he did isn't that bad, according to the leaders in this movement. Bob Jones thought he was hearing from God. He was taking risks. He was telling Mike Bickle to do the same thing with a whole bunch of young women.
I don't want our spirit-filled movement to get too safe.
Yeah.
Right?
Say it again.
Devil is a liar!
You could talk to Mike Bickle and find out that Bob Jones was his go-to prophet.
Like, I love Bob Jones with all my heart. He's like my grandpa.
Bob Jones became a spiritual father to me. He was crazy.
Bob Jones, what a wonderful man and a dear friend of this house.
This prophet named Bob Jones said, you have a teaching gift.
Dr. Brown, I recently learned about IHOP from multiple independent outlets within the past couple of months that seem to be surrounded by controversy, but they seem genuine. Can you help? Yeah, I've known Mike Bickle since early 1990s, thereabouts. We don't get to spend much time together, but when we do, the fellowship is rich. I find Mike Bickle to be a tremendously sincere, tremendously loving, Jesus-devoted man who spends hours every day in the Word and prayer, and who's a really humble guy. People moved to Kansas City to spend time with Mike. I said, that won't happen. He spends all his time with the Lord. He's in the prayer room. You're not going to be buddy-buddy.
I got invited to go and hang out with Prophet Bob Jones. And, you know, if you don't know who that is, he was one of the Papa prophets that really raised up so many ministries. I mean, he prophesied a lot of what Bethel Church is doing in Reading, you know, with Bill Johnson, what Mike Bickle's doing with the IHOP movement, what, Morning Star's doing with Rick Joyner.
There was a prophecy by this renowned prophet, Bob Jones, that said, when the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl, it's going to be a sign that the apostolic chiefs are rising in this generation, a new generation of apostles.
He talked about apostolic chiefs being raised up. And as a matter of fact, the day of the Super Bowl, Kanye West did a big stadium event as well that was sold out, and many people were led to Jesus.
And the Send, so you guys know Lou Engle, you guys know them, Andy Bird, Francis Chan. So they did this big event in the Kansas City Chiefs, basically in their stadium, and I got invited. And they were just like, and I didn't know why I was there, and there's all these renowned men of God, and they're walking through the stadium, and we're doing this intercession and prayer, and finally they stop, and they're like, okay, Mike, we want to tell you why you are here. And they said that we were praying, and as a staff, we got a word from God that God has selected you to do stadium events in the hardest cities of the U.S.
I mean, I remember doing meetings. I don't know if you ever heard of a guy named Bob Jones, but he was a legit prophet. And I remember early on in my walk, I did one of my first conferences. I'm like 20 years old with the prophet Bob Jones. I mean, this guy was wild. His encounters were wild. His words were unbelievable, just crazy. I knew he was a legit prophet.
I love you. I so respect you. I am so glad God brought us together. You are a brother to me. When you speak, it is like water to my soul. And when I come and I'm a part of anything of IHOP, I leave filled.
Francis has been destroyed on the internet. Francis has been destroyed on the internet.
And so with me today, I have Mike Bickle, who is the founder of International House of Prayer.
What's crazy is this prophet Bob Jones in 2014 said that when the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, you will know revival is coming. He said these apostolic chiefs will usher in a 1 billion soul harvest. I don't think it's a coincidence that now twice in the past 3 years, the Chiefs have won the Super Bowl. And the last time they won it was 50 years ago when a revival broke out at Asbury University in 1970.
Mike Bickle, International House of Prayer. God used Bob Jones to speak that into Mike Bickle's life when Mike's going like, and you gotta, if you know Mike Bickle's just like, what does that mean? You know, before it even manifested.
Well, you know, Bob Jones, Prophet Bob Jones is now with the Lord. He used to say, and he'd say it in a Southern accent, he goes, I don't just see angels, I use them. He would say that, you know.
Well, ministering spirits for us.
Yeah.
Several years ago, actually, you know, it was way back in the day. I was 27 years old. You know what I'm saying? And, but I'll never forget, you know, the prophet Bob Jones. I was preaching with him at Morning Star Ministries, him and Bobby Connor and Larry Randolph and all these guys. And, you know, I grew up in the spirit anyway with a bunch of the seer prophets. Many of you may not know them, or some of you might. But, I mean, listen, these dudes, they were like crazy prophets. Like they'll tell you, you know, stuff about you that you didn't even know, and then you look it up and you're like, well, that was true. Like, I mean, you ever been around people like that? You know,
I believe God spoke to me, where suddenly I don't know if it was, I don't remember if it was an audible voice or whatever, but it was new to me. And it was like saying, Francis, I know you are afraid of these people. Do not be afraid of these people. And it was something like, this is your family. And I'm just going, okay. But I'm not believing it totally. You don't understand, like when you're ingrained in something your whole life and taught something for years and believing it for years, and then you're warned again, you don't just immediately, even though you think you're hearing a voice right then, it's new to you, it's peculiar to you. But it was this sense in which, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. This is your family. And as we got to know each other, and it just became this beautiful time to where at the end, and I asked Mike, he's like, ask any question you have about anything you've ever heard about me. And I began asking, and he began answering and explaining why he didn't spend his life defending himself. And God told him not to do that. And my jaw is just dropping at the humility of this man, the biblical knowledge of this man, the faithfulness for so many years, that by the end of our time, I had to just publicly say, look, I don't care what you think. And I'm speaking to the people that have been following me for years and had written me off now. I'm going, I love this man. And I just wanted to stand by him because I'm going, I misread him. I was told the wrong things about him, and I see who he is now, and I'm going to stand with him.
I remember Mike Bickle coming back shaking his head because Bob Jones told him something, and it rattled our cage. And Bob said, that man, Christ Jesus, he's the strangest man I ever met.
And you have written this awesome book with Mike Bickle doing the foreword called Strike the Mark.
Right.
And Mike Bickle had a word.
I did Mike Bickle, mutual friend, on Harp and Bowl.
Yes.
I used Cindy Jacobs.
Enough!
But I saw it connected to And One Dan. This is a username or something, And One Dan. I think it's her email.
That they would do signs,
They would do wonders.
You know what?
Creepy. That's really slanderous.
Hey,